Hi, everyone. Excited to be here. Thank you all for coming for our session about vulnerability management in the cloud. My name is Amos. I'm a product manager for Tenable. And before I start, so I know my crowd a bit. Which one of you, by a show of hands, is familiar with Tenable? And Tenable VM? And Tenable Cloud Security? Cool. So let's start. So what are we going to talk about today? We'll start about speaking about the challenges and the different complexities of vulnerability management in the cloud and why is it different from doing the same on-premises. We'll talk about Tenable and specifically Tenable Cloud Security and why I believe we're a great partner for you to have for the vulnerability management program in the cloud. And also about our brand new, I think 2 weeks old, Cloud VM offering that is really unique and can solve a lot of your problems. And obviously, we'll see it in action with a live demo. So there are many challenges for vulnerability management, but right now we'll focus on the cloud and why is it different than the standard challenges of VM. So the cloud has unique workloads with unique workload lifecycle, especially containers. They are stored their images are stored in container repositories. They are spun up, taken down. They're very ephemeral. They change all the time, which creates challenges of visibility. It's hard to know what's going on. And these visibility challenges make it really, really hard to operationalize agent-based solutions. It's hard to deploy everything. It's hard to manage everything, to create decent coverage. So these solutions basically don't really work in the cloud. On top of that, cloud environments are very complex. They have tons of different resources, tons of different services. Each one has its own configuration, which creates very non-trivial context for the vulnerabilities, and you must know the context to prioritize the vulnerabilities well. So you have the challenges for the cloud, but it becomes even more complex when you combine it with managing vulnerabilities on-prem. It's hard to have one solution to answer both all of these challenges and the on-prem challenges. So most solutions only do one of them. So it's hard to solve both. So we have challenges. Why I believe we're a great vendor to solve these challenges. So Tenable is a leader for over 2 decades in the vulnerability management domain. And why is that? We have a really, really good vulnerability intelligence, which helps you prioritize what vulnerabilities you need to solve first. CVSS isn't really good at doing that. 60% of CVEs have CVSS that is high or critical. So basically, you can't prioritize based on CVSS. And with Tenable's vulnerability priority rating, our proprietary scoring for CVEs, it's more than an order of magnitude lower than that. So it's really easy to know what you should do first, where to focus. And you might ask yourself, all right, what you're doing there? How do you prioritize? So we take many different risk factors, including knowing what real threat actors do and where, and we push all of these factors into our proprietary machine learning engine, and it creates the new scoring, which is much, much more accurate. On top of helping you prioritize, we also help you remediate. We also help you remediate efficiently with our plugin IDs. What's a plugin? A plugin is a grouping of CVEs where we tell you that with a single action, what's an action, like a software update or a patch, you can solve multiple CVEs. So if we tell you that if you operate this version, you only solve one CVE, but if you do this, you solve 20 with a single action, you obviously want to start with solving 20 CVEs at a time, and it helps you create a more efficient remediation program. So for over 2 decades, we did great vulnerability management, but in the recent years, Tenable also became a very important player in the cloud security market and the exposure management market. So let's talk a bit about our cloud security solution. Just one sec. Yeah, so Tenable Cloud Security connects to your cloud environment or cloud environments, even multi-cloud environments, and basically reads everything and help you create an inventory of what you have there and where your risk lies over there. We look at everything from IAM configuration, data assets, obviously vulnerabilities, and create a unified view of the risk and the different contexts for everything. And why should you care, even if you care mostly about vulnerabilities? We can take a look at this. You can see the toxic combination over there with the red rectangle, where you can see that we don't only show you vulnerabilities, we show you the context. We take everything we learn from the cloud as a context for vulnerabilities. If you read the first one, we tell you that you have critical vulnerabilities, but these vulnerabilities are also on workloads that face the public internet, and they also have high privileges. So these are the vulnerabilities you want to solve first. Obviously, they are much more important than vulnerabilities in assets that don't see the internet at all. And once you know all of your cloud risk, you want to push it into our exposure management platform, Tenable One, recently selected by Gartner and Forrester as the #1 leader in exposure management. And what's exposure management? You have many different tools, I assume, that collect and analyze risks in different places of your environment, cloud, on-prem, OT, whatever. And you want to have a centralized single pane of glass to see all the risk. And this is Tenable One. We normalize the information and create a unified risk view. So we'll see it in action a bit later. And now I'm really happy to talk about our new offering. As I said, it's only 2 weeks old for Cloud VM. Why did we build this offering? So we talked to many VM professionals, and they told us, all right, we understand what you're doing in the cloud. Your CNAPP cloud security platform is great. We see it provides a lot of interesting insights, but we want to start more focused on vulnerability management. So we may get there a bit later, but we want more lightweight solution that only solve these specific problems. And we listened, and we did it. So Cloud VM is a lightweight solution focusing on vulnerability management in the cloud. What use cases are we trying to solve? So first of all, you have assets in the cloud. You want to know what vulnerabilities they have. We do it relying on the same vulnerability database that we talked about before. We can support migration from on-prem to cloud, because you want to have, during this process, it can be challenging to have a continuous view of what's the current state of your risk. And with this offering, you can do it. And once you have a hybrid environment, you want to have a single pane of glass to see all your risk of everything from your on-prem environment and in the cloud with a unified view. So all these use cases are supported here. And now let's dive into the offering and what we're doing there. So in the cloud, 2 major types of workloads, VMs and containers. Containers are more standards, more similar to on-prem. So we'll focus on containers that are more unique to the cloud. Containers have a unique life cycle. They start with as a Docker file in your code repo. Then you build the image and push it into a test container repository, container registry. You test it, and then when everything is good, you push it to your production registry and into production. And we believe that you need to analyze the risk and to surface it as early as possible. You don't need to wait to runtime. You need to do it as shift left as possible because it's easier to fix. So our solution analyzes the risk from the test, the test registries all the way to runtime, because you always want to check also all the way to the right, because this is what's actually running. And maybe you missed something when you scan the registries, and you want to see what's going on in there. So let's dive another step inside. We do all of it agentlessly. As I said, agent in the cloud is problematic. It's hard to deploy. So we scan without an agent. You just connect us to your cloud environment, and it's very short. It takes minutes. And we scan the workloads, both VMs and containers. We create a comprehensive software inventory. And from the inventory with the vulnerability database, we create a list of all the CVEs that you have in your environment. On top of doing the runtime analysis, we connect to your image registries, to container image registries, and we analyze them. So with the cloud connector, we can scan ECR repositories, but we don't stop there. We can also connect to third-party repos. You can connect us there, provide the relevant permissions, and we can read the images from there, but also correlate them to what we found on runtime. So it's not separate. And once we have all of the information from all the vulnerability that we found in the repositories and in runtime, we combine it also with our exposure management platform to combine it with the vulnerability findings from other places in your organization, not just the cloud. This is, we'll see it again in a demo right about now. Yeah. So now let's see it in action, and I'll apologize in advance. The video controls are a bit challenging, so I hope it goes smoothly, but if not, bear with me. Oh, yeah. You see, I told you. Yeah. Yeah, so here you can see the dashboard. Oh, yeah. You can see the dashboard. You can see the different trends. You have here how many vulnerabilities you have in your environment. You can see the MTTR analysis based on the severity. And you can see different, on the bottom, you can see different aggregations by different factors of the vulnerabilities we found in your environment. So you can see the inventory. Here we first focus on the container repositories. You can see here the list of many different repositories we're connected to. Let's click one of the images and see the findings we found on the image. We'll start with vulnerability findings. You click here, and you see a full list of what we found on this image, all the vulnerabilities, a lot of information about it. We don't stop with vulnerabilities. We also scan for malicious files we found there on the image. Here you can see, for example, Metasploit files that have no business on being on production images, and we found them on this container. Now, after we saw findings on container images, we can see findings on actual workloads found on runtime. Here we'll look at VMs with vulnerabilities in them. You can see we found many resources. We'll choose one of them that has vulnerabilities. And you can see an overview of what we found there on this workload. Here, again, a full list of vulnerabilities on this runtime workload. And the full software inventory, whether vulnerable or not vulnerable. And if you found malicious files, you can also see them there. And the next very important view is a full view of all the vulnerabilities we found in your environment. You can filter them, for example, by a specific account and by severity, so you can focus on the thing that you really want to solve first, high and critical vulnerabilities. And not only that, for example, let's take the case where your CISO told you, my friend told me there's this new attack, a new vulnerability is called zero logon. Are we impacted? So you can go here, look for the new threat by name, zero logon, and you see where you found it in your environment. Yeah, here you can see the different scores, both VPR and CVSS. Here you can see the different risk factors we take into account when calculating the VPR. And at the bottom you see the real-world events, the different things attacker did that impact also the severity and the trend over time. The VPR can be reduced and then increased according to the real-world events that we found. You can also view it as a timeline, and if you click it, you get more information about the event that we're talking about. On top of that, you can also search by CVE ID and see the information about the specific CVE. And you can see the impact it has on your environment, where you found this CVE. You can see the full list of all VMs impacted by this vulnerability, and also all container images and also software packages that have this vulnerability in runtime. Now we're moving to Tenable One, our exposure management platform. Here you see a unified view of the exposure, of the risk you have across all of your environment, not just cloud. You can see also OT, web application scanning, whatever sources you have for risk and vulnerabilities. But you can also look at it per exposure type, per category, per source. You have also a unified inventory of all of your assets. And what's really, really cool here is that you have the AES, the Asset Exposure Score, that normalizes the risk for all your assets into one prioritized list, which is really non-trivial, because usually you must go to different tools and see, they say this is important, they say that is important. How do I know what's most important? Here, you look at this with this score. And once you have this unified score for everything, you can create programs that take into account risks from different places. So let's look at cloud migrations that we mentioned before. We can tag some resources as related to migration, some from the still on-prem, some already in the cloud, and they are tagged. And once they are tagged, you can create a card that lets you monitor this program, this project. Here you have an overview. You can see the custom dashboard, the custom view we created for this project, for these tags. And you get many metrics that give you very, very deep visibility on the current risk and the trends over time, and where the risk lies, whether it's still on-prem or is it mostly on the ones that already moved to the cloud. And you can see a dashboard that you can really customize to show whatever you want to follow different metrics you really, really care about. Cool. So this is the demo, and before leaving, let's focus on the things that I really want you to remember once you leave this meeting. So I talked a lot, so these are the most important things. Yes. If you haven't already, you really should do vulnerability management in the cloud, because it has vulnerabilities. You should get a hold of them and see what's important, what's less important. When you do it, it's really, really better if you do it with a unified program for the VM, for VM in on-prem and in the cloud. And to do it, it's better to do it with a vendor that has really deep expertise, both in vulnerability management and in the cloud. And I think we are such a vendor. Remember that we have a brand new offering for vulnerability management in the cloud that is lightweight, that is first step into the cloud. And if you want to hear more about this or anything Tenable, feel free to come to our booth, 251. It's just like over there. So I'll be there, and other people will be there, and we'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And I'll also be around here if you want to ask anything now. So thank you very much.